Welcome to the Holy Smokes Podcast, a show about faith, friendship, fine tobacco, and drink. I'm Steve Reiter, and I am in Culebra Cigar Lounge.
I think that's how you say it, Culebra.
Culebra. We're in Ontario, right? Ontario,
Yeah.
California.
Yeah, it's right by the Ontario Mills, the giant mall out here.
And the voice you hear is our guest today, Ethan Nicolle. Now, Ethan, our Holy Smokes group are overwhelmingly huge fans of the Babylon Bee.
Nice.
And so you are the creative director?
That's the title. When I came on as their second ever employee,
Yeah.
they said, just figure out what title you want to give yourself. So I Googled titles on magazines and newspapers and stuff like that, and I found editor-in-chief was already taken by Kyle, the other guy. So
Yeah.
the next one down was creative director, which kind of worked because I do a lot of the photoshopping. I'm designing the new book we're doing. So I do a lot of the visual creative stuff too. But just like everybody else, when I write, I pitch headlines, and I do the podcast. So,
Well, first question. First
Okay.
off, thanks for being a part of
thanks
this.
for having me. I love it.
And first question, what you smoking?
Well, I love Rocky Patel's, and so I'm smoking I believe it's just a 1992. I thought it was the Connecticut. It's the Black Wrapper, 1992. Rocky Patel.
Nice. And then I have an H. Upman Banker. It's my first banker from H. Upman, so I've thought about getting a box.
Does that mean there's a bunch of like $100 bills inside of it?
Not for the price I paid. So, Ethan, we'll get to the bee in a little bit, but I'm just fascinated with your story. I've been listening. You have a podcast, Audio Mullet. Mm-hmm. You've written some books. You've illustrated. You're a very talented illustrator.
Thank you.
And a number of different books. Tell our listeners about your story. You grew up in Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm from small town Oregon, a little area called Coos Bay, which I was from all over that area. Little towns. Coos Bay was the big city to us. Not the big city, it's the main town, but then Portland was the really big city to us.
Yeah.
It was like a 4-hour drive.
So Coos Bay it's
like
southern
on the coast,
Oregon.
Southern Oregon coast, yeah.
I just remember someone in the Holy Smokes group posting that they were in Coos Bay, and I was looking to try and figure out where it was, because I know some guys in Portland and also a friend of mine just moved about an hour south along the coast. And so I was going to introduce them, but I was like, it's a little too far for them to be introduced. But
yeah, I grew up in that area. I mean, around age 7. We lived in Colorado when I was really young, but I don't have many memories of it. But
where in Colorado?
A little area called Bennett, which is outside of Denver.
I used to coach high school football, and we played Bennett.
Yeah?
My last year that I coached.
I went back when we went to visit my grandfather just before he passed on his 90th birthday. Yeah, I went back to check out the town. It was so crazy how tiny it was compared to what I remembered.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's nothing. It's almost just a little patch of houses.
Yeah, for people that aren't familiar with Colorado, Bennett is pretty much straight east of Denver. I'd say probably about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Very rural.
Super rural.
Very small town, farmer town.
So my family always had a thing for rural. We it was never even really in their heads to go anywhere, any big cities type stuff or anything. So yeah, I grew up in this small town. I always loved drawing, just from the moment I could touch a pencil. I just always did it. I always loved it. I don't remember starting. So people always ask me, when did you start? I don't remember, I always had the passion to get better at it, so I would get books on how to do it. And so I don't know, I don't want to tell my whole life story here, but what kind of got me to move eventually to LA was that I had started doing comics, and one of my comics had been published. I got invited to start pitching TV shows, Cartoon Network, and then my first TV show got optioned. And that got my foot in the door.
What show was that?
It was called Snub Nose and Pug. It got optioned does not mean made.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I've had not many, but multiple shows optioned and none made, except for Axe Cop, as we'll probably talk about. But anyway, so I was in Hollywood trying to pitch more shows, do more comics, and really not sure what I was doing with myself. Single, so I'm living in this tiny studio. Rental. I'm just renting a room for this old couple, and then I make this. I go home for Christmas and I make this comic called Axe Cop, and just a page with my 5-year-old brother, who's 24 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
We're just goofing off. I'm actually trying to get my head out of this trying to make it thing. You know, I'm trying to just have fun with my little brother.
Yeah.
I wasn't even planning to draw anything on that trip. I was trying to take a break, you know. And, just excited about this idea where he said, let's play Axe Cop together with this toy axe, and just whatever he said, I'd ask him all these questions and piece together a story. Got excited about it, and I just kind of sloppily drew a comic. The original reason I made the Axe Cop website was to test out comics, web comics, and see, you know, just to dip my toe in the water and to work out the kinks, because I had another comic in the works called Bearmageddon, and I wanted to get it right when I released it.
Yeah.
So we put this kind of thrown together Axe Cop website up, and it went viral. And so that's kind of like the launching thing. I'm like known as the Axe Cop guy now. It ended up becoming a TV show on Fox. It was,
which is available. Which is available on Hulu.
It's all on Hulu.
If people want to stream, I streamed the first one last night, and I was like, oh my gosh, my boys and I love stupid humor.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I get back to Colorado, we're going to start binge watching Axe Cop.
Yeah, it's very unhinged. It's Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec, known as for playing Ron Swanson. Does the voice of Axe Cop. There's a lot of amazing voices in the show, and it's super unhinged. It's like uncensored 5-year-old. So it's like if you let a 5-year-old just make up stories, and you don't tell him, no, we don't chop heads off. You just go, okay, chopped his head off, then what? That's Axe Cop. He chops people's heads off like crazy. That's his whole way he fights crime.
So when you started making the TV show, was your little brother a creative consultant on the show?
He wasn't, because he still lived up in rural Washington, which is where my dad lives with my other siblings and my stepmom. And so we would actually call him, if we'd hit a rut on a story idea, we'd put him on conference. And there was one time where we called him to get an idea for an ending, how he would end this. A lot of times it was endings. We needed an idea for just to go over the top. Yeah, there was one time the whole staff started to crowd into the room around he had no idea. He thought he was just talking to me. And he just is going off this whole crazy scenario. Telescope gun cop shoots this gun into the air, and it frees all the bad guys from prison, and they all come running to help him and all this stuff. Just this insane ending that he wrote. And it never got, I think parts of it may have gotten used, but it was just, when he finished, he got this loud, rousing applause. Yeah, it was a crazy experience. It was weird. I did feel like I was really trying to be protective of him during that, and I think it all worked out. I mean, you know, Axe Cop stayed small enough that it never felt like I was exploiting my little brother. You know, we'd have little moments where we were like at Comic-Con and we're like celebrities for a day, but it wasn't like a life of celebrity. It was just like here and there. You go to a comic convention, suddenly everybody knows who you are. But then you just go back to normal life. So he'd kind of just say, he'd tell people that he met, and be like, you know, we're famous. But it's just funny. It's funny the way that he didn't even know what it meant, you know.
Were you born and raised in a Christian home?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My mom was raised Roman Catholic, and my dad was kind of this born-again Pentecostal guy. And so they were kind of compromising and going to like a community church, but then my parents divorced when I was 8. So my dad went Pentecostal, back to Pentecostal, and my mom went to Catholic. So we were with them alternating weekends. So on the weekends I was with my dad, who was actually homeless at the time. We'd live in his van and go to his Pentecostal church. And then with my mom, we'd be going through catechism. So I was seeing both sides, which was, I think, led to a lot of confusion for a kid. But it also led me to kind of find faith for myself, because I was starting to feel like God was bipolar through the two types of worship, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I had an interesting launching. And so I kind of disowned my faith, self-proclaimed atheist in like junior high, which I think is pretty typical. And then in high school, I came to Christ through Young Life. And stuck with it since, yeah.
So where'd you go to school?
You mean like high school or?
College? Did you?
I didn't go to college.
You didn't go? Okay.
I started community college back in Coos Bay. I had a full ride for that, but I just didn't like the art program, and I kind of just decided I only wanted to go if I could find a good art program, a good school, and a scholarship, because I didn't want to go into debt for art.
Yeah.
I just felt like that was foolish.
Wow.
So
How old are you?
Now?
Yeah.
39.
39. Okay, so you're about my little brother's age and my wife's age, and so that's pretty remarkable for someone in, the late 90s, I assume, is when you graduated high school, probably 97, 98. And to kind of understand that idea of coming out of school with debt.
I just grew up in a really poor family.
Yeah.
And large amounts of debt. Already at that, I already had accumulated some debt just on credit cards and stuff. And I had put myself out of, I had a van because I was in a band. And I...
What'd you play?
I played bass and I sing.
Yeah.
I got in a wreck. I backed into somebody, my friend's car. And the insurance was going to make, my insurance payment was going to be so high, I couldn't afford the payments on the van and the insurance. And so I actually put myself out of having a van for I sold the van.
Yeah.
I didn't get as much as I owed on it, so I spent a year walking and paying the van off. I just had this fear of debt after that and a bad credit card thing. And the numbers that you hear for school, that amount just sounded overwhelming to me. And I already knew the reality. I had been kind of working independently as an artist on the side, even though I was doing pizza delivery and I was working at a sign shop and doing all this stuff. But I just knew the reality that the reality of making really good money in art. I just I didn't know how I was going to do that. And I don't know. So yeah, that was just my mindset. I did not want to go into debt for that.
So how'd you end up then in Southern California?
When I got my first TV show optioned, I had been talking a lot with my friend Doug Tinaple, who was at the time really, I was more of a fanboy. He was kind of my Obi-Wan. And I had been communicating with him on the internet a lot. And because he was one of the only Christians in the industry, at least outspoken in comics. He created Earthworm Jim, the video game, but he makes all these graphic novels, and he's a very original voice. He expresses his faith in his own way, which is kind of rare in Christianity. We all kind of have our approved cultural ways we express our faith. So he's doing it with all these alien stories and all this weird humor, and so he instantly became kind of a hero. And
how'd you meet him?
Through my very first time going to San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I had never been to any comic convention in my life, and in my hometown, I was the best artist in town. That sounds really cocky to say. It's a small town.
Yeah.
And maybe I wasn't, but I was known. I was known for my art. It was people just knew me for it. So I thought if I walked into San Diego Comic Con, I could just show my art and be like, "Oh yeah, here's a job." I just figured it was a matter of time before I got my job as a comic book artist.
Yeah.
And so I had money saved up to go to San Diego Comic Con for the first time. I actually lost my job, so I couldn't spend it. But then a friend of mine who was a therapist that was a physical therapist who I was renting a room from at the time really wanted me to go, so he paid my way. And so I went. I got in all these long lines to show my portfolio and realized that I was in these giant long lines with amazing artists who blew me out of the water. And realized that I was just not anywhere near ready to make it in this industry. So sad and dejected, I just kind of found a random thing on the program, and I found a panel that said Creature Tech, which is a comic that Doug Tinaple did. I thought it was going to be like Creature Puppets or something, so I went and sat down. It was just a guy talking about his story in his comic. It was Doug Tinaple.
Yeah.
And that was now looking back, that's why I went to that Comic-Con, was to meet Doug. He really became a mentor to me. And so, yeah, he started up a forum on his website. That was around 2001 or 2 or something.
Yeah.
It was quite a ways back. And so I kept in contact with him through that, became part of his kind of little online groupie club. And every year at Comic-Con, we'd meet and get together. And so he kind of watched me grow from, my first book, which took me years and was terrible. And he saw, I made my first book that actually got published, and it got an Eisner nomination, which is, Eisners are they're the big award in comics,
Yeah.
So yeah, he was just kind of there the whole way, giving me tips and pointers, and we also just kindred spirits. So he kept telling me to move to LA, and when I finally got a TV show optioned,
yeah,
I was from Oregon City, where I was living up near Portland, and that was when I finally decided, all right, I got to do it. I'm living in an attic above a garage. I got nothing going on in my life. The band I was in broke up. We were trying to make it a career. It wasn't working out, and I just had nothing. So, all right. So I shoved everything I could fit into my little 2-door car and moved down to L.A. And now here I am.
So when you get down here, what was it like for you to be small town Oregon kid with big dreams of LA. What was that journey like? Especially those first, couple of years.
Well, I had spent a couple years living in Portland, so I'd at least lived in a bigger city, even though now that I'm in LA, Portland seems like a small town.
Yeah, it's
totally. Crazy.
Yeah.
Portland seems very quaint. It was wild. I mean, I moved here and I really didn't know what to expect. I just found this couple that had a studio, just a room in their house.
Yeah.
For rent that already had furnished. It was already furnished with like a little day bed and like a tiny desk, and it was the smallest little space. I showed up at like 2 a.m. I drove the whole way in one drive, and I just went in and rented the place, and it just kind of, we hit it off. And Doug was the only person I really knew in the area. I knew a couple other artists from online, so it kind of started off that way. And then I just did eHarmony because I didn't know how I was I was still single, and so I did a lot of eHarmony. And me and Doug started a group called the Chestertonians because we love reading G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah.
And that was big. It really grew fast, and we got all these guys that love cigar smoking, Christians, Catholics. We'd all get together on Sundays after church, read Chesterton, smoke cigars and pipes, and drink whiskey and beer. And the group grew so big that we had to cut it off because it got to be like 20, 25 people cramming in Doug's backyard. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that was a really cool group. It's probably something like a Holy Smokes gathering. Like we became very close, and it was very because a lot of us were more conservative leaning too, which is rare in Hollywood and everything. So it was kind of this cool little group of who felt kind of like outcasts in the industry. We didn't really fit in with the industry, but we fit in this little group, and we just had the best time. Just conversation. Something about cigars make you have better conversations.
Oh my goodness, totally. So how'd you get into cigars?
Once again, Doug TeNapel. The funny thing is, I don't know how into cigars he was but he would talk about them on the forum every now and then. And at that time, I had thought, wait a minute, Christians can't smoke cigars. That's evil. And that was kind of one of the first things that. Well, we got like a loud.
We're in a private lounge conference room at Culebra Cigar Company in Ontario, California.
Yeah.
And thanks to Matt and the team for letting us hole up here and get this done. This is a really, really cool spot.
Yeah, it's just brand new. There's leather chairs everywhere. It's one of the few places in Southern California that's like open. It's not tiny and small.
Yeah.
There's lots of seating. It's very clean and nice. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you're in the Inland Empire.
Yes.
But I guess they got some kind of AC or something that's cleaning the air out or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
What was I talking about?
So Doug got you into cigars.
So he was talking about them, and it was kind of the first thing that kind of challenged my, or made me start to realize there are cultural Christian things that actually aren't in the Bible anywhere, that we've kind of created little rules about. It's like we've added, I think Charles Spurgeon would say we added commandments. That was when people were upset with him for smoking. He'd say, I don't know why you want to add to the 10 Commandments. I think there's already enough in there. And so that was kind of my, when I started throwing off my culture Christianity, and I'd always been curious about cigars and pipes because my grandpa had smoked them, and something I just decided I really wanted to try it.
The grandpa in Bennett?
Yep.
Okay.
He's actually, he's Denver, but yeah.
Okay.
So I lived in this small town with no cigar shops anywhere. I had heard that they sold cigars at the golf course, which is about 20 minutes out of town.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I just drove out there and I asked if they'd sold cigars anywhere. And the guy goes, you come with me. And he walks me like through all this back area, offices downstairs to this little office of his where all this nice stuff is. I don't know if he's like a manager there.
Yeah.
He opens up this private thing and he goes, this is what we got here. And he just hands me a punch. And he goes, there you go. And he just gave it to me. And I was like, I don't owe you for this. He's like, oh, it's fine. And We usually have more than this, but I guess that it's just something. They don't actually have a shop and they don't actually sell them, so they just give them samples there, and they have them for the guests or something. I don't know. Because it's a really fancy, rich golf course.
Yeah.
So I took that punch. I went and parked my car and smoked it with the windows down, and I got I nearly threw up. I got so sick. But something about it I really enjoyed, and I had been taking drawing classes in Eugene, just learning figure drawing. So I'd drive out for drawing. That was one thing. If I wasn't going to go to college, I was going to just at least train myself in whatever way I could. So I was getting books, and I was going out. I knew that figure drawing was a huge thing you need to learn. So I was going out for figure drawing classes in Eugene in my little car I had bought for like $200 that broke down every time I did this trip. And but I'd stop at this little cigar shop out there and try to stock up on what I could afford. So that got me into it, and then I started. I went on this forum. What was it called? I think it was just called Stogie. I can't remember what it was. It was this cigar smoker forum I just found, and I Googled it, and over time I became known on the forum as the artist, because who drew everybody's avatars. And
that's awesome.
And so guys they'd have all these inside jokes about each other. So then they'd want me to draw the other guy. So they'd private message me and be like, "Okay, you draw that guy. Here's all the jokes I want to work into it." And then they're like, and I always did it just for cigars. So suddenly I was getting, they call it sending a bomb. I don't know if you guys know that within the Holy Smokes, but they have all these terms. So bombing somebody means they don't know what's happening. A package shows up and it's full of cigars. And then you just share what you got on the forum.
Awesome.
And I was it became almost like a competition to see who could bomb. My name was Eve on the forum.
Yeah.
To see who could bomb Eve the most, because my cartoons become so popular. So I'm this guy with not making hardly any money. I can't afford these cigars. These guys are sending me all these Cuban cigars and all these nice, super expensive cigars. I have to buy a humidor just to try to handle all of them, and so that was my big jump in. And then one thing I did, I knew that Doug liked Monte Cristos. When I made my first book, I really wanted to get him to write me a blurb for the back cover. So I got this guy on there. I told them, the guys on there, I really need to get somebody, this guy, some Cuban Monte Cristos. I really want to impress him, send him with the book, and try to get him to send me a review.
Yeah.
And so this guy, they gave me this drawing thing I did, and then they bombed me with this massive blister pack of all these Cuban Monte Cristos. They had the years written on them and everything. It had to be, I don't know how much money that thing had to be worth. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I just sent it off to Doug with the book. The book was terrible, but Doug still kindly wrote me the best review he could of it.
Yeah. What book was that?
It was called The Weevil. It was really kind of my learning project. It's my first 100-page book. Super over-detailed, confusing story, but we all need to get our first project out of the way, I think, especially when you're trying to be a writer, artist. We overcomplicate things. So the next thing I did was very simple. It was called Chumble Spuzz. This very silly comic I did in 3 months, and that was the thing that got me published and Eisner nominated and kind of put me on the map in the industry. So,
that's cool. That's awesome. So you have, I think it's 9 books available on Kindle. So you have 6 Axe Cop books, and then you have this weird fascination with bears.
Yeah.
Because you have Bearmageddon, you have a book called Bears Want to Kill You, The Authoritative Guide to Survival in the War Between Man and Bear.
Right, that's my latest book.
And then Dickinson Killdeer's Guide to Bears of the Apocalypse. Ursine Abominations of the End Times and How to Defeat Them.
So Bearmageddon was kind of my passion project. It was like my Shaun of the Dead with bears, my comedy horror movie idea. So I've been working on it. I actually just published a page the other day. I've been putting out for years now.
Yeah.
And so I've always done it. It's always almost always been my experiment. It's just an ongoing story about some slackers who get caught in a world with bears. And web comics are very tricky to promote. Axe Cop I lucked out with. So I started coming with ways to promote my comic, Bearmageddon. And I started creating these bear memes. There's a couple that have gone like super viral, like front page of Reddit type stuff. And so I created a website. I actually was a fan of the Babylon Bee, so I had a friend of mine who helped me build websites. I said, see this Babylon Bee site? I want to make this, but for bear news. So I created the Bearmageddon News Network. And then I'd put a news story out every day, some stupid infographic or whatever. So I did that for like a year. And some of those went really viral. They were much more popular than my actual comic, but it got a lot of people to find out about my comic. And so I actually eventually decided I wanted to do a Kickstarter, and really to kind of experiment with the process. I wanted to try something out that I knew I could just crank out, and I knew I could crank out this bear book because I had all this stuff already made on the site. And so I did a Kickstarter, and it was successful, overfunded, and
the bear book, Bears Want to Kill You?
Bears Want to Kill You, yep. So I put that out, and I only have about 2 boxes left of my first printing, so I think like 60 books left. So it's almost out. I don't actually have the funding yet for a second printing, but if somebody wants it, you should jump on and get it. Amazon.
Get it on Amazon, and you can also get it on Kindle. I actually bought all 6 Axe Cop books as well as your 3 bear books.
Nice.
And these are ones I'm going to hand to my boys because this is just funny stuff. I mean, physical attributes of bears. This is one of the quotes in the book. Bears are the most impressive and dangerous animals in the universe. While most animals have room to evolve, the bear is the first creature confirmed by science to have actually completed evolution. Some of this stuff, like the bear's sense of smell. The nose of a bear contains lubricating glands that keep it moist. This moisture traps smells like glue and stores them in a microscopic filing system where every smell the bear has ever smelled is stored and easily recovered like a mental Rolodex of stench. If you had Taco Bell and a bear sniffed a pile of your feces, it can not only detect that you ate Taco Bell, anyone can tell that, but you would know exactly what percentage of meat was cow, where the cow was raised, what kind of cologne the farmers wore, what kind of grass the cow ate, what the weather was like, what the cow was thinking when it was slain, and what kind of self-destructive thoughts led you to secretly eat Taco Bell alone in your car at 4 in the morning.
I'm feeling a lot about myself there.
This is awesome. So
that's just a fun, ridiculous book. It's a great like bathroom book or a coffee table book. I want to make a book you can flip to any page and just get a laugh instantly.
And it is indeed that. So going back to Axe Cop, what was it like for you to be, the Christian, secretly, I assume? You probably didn't really kind of announce, I'm a Christian. And
yeah.
So what was it like for you to be in Hollywood kind of creating the show?
I found out after my band ended and then I started having to live normal life again that I was actually an introvert. I didn't realize that because I had been living, my whole social life was my band and that interaction.
Yeah.
And I could function within that where people knew about my music and stuff, and then I could start from that starting point. But I had a really tough time with that. So I had this introversion already. I already had this shyness about me. And then also culturally, this is like around when Obama got elected, and there was a real post-Bush, Republicans are evil, was really, really strong. I mean, conservatives are evil. I had joined Friends of Abe, which is this group, conservative group in Hollywood that Gary Sinise started with Doug when I came down here. And it was like quiet, secret meetings, and stuff. There was a real fear in the air about, admitting that you're a Christian conservative, especially in Hollywood at the time. So yeah, and I hear suddenly my career's taking off, and I'm just like, I was pretty terrified. I just didn't know. I didn't know, and I still don't quite know how it's actually taken. I think, I don't know. I mean, I do think there's some of it's paranoia, some of it's definitely valid, but I do think it did hinder me a bit in that I was so quiet and so shy, and in Hollywood, keeping false confidence just goes a long way. Like you need to be the guy who's throwing ideas out and confident in the room, and I think that held me back in that area a lot. I think when I look back on how I handled it. I also had this, on top of that, I had this fear of, I didn't want to exploit my little brother. And my family was this tiny, small town family living a very simple life. suddenly we're getting invited to San Diego Comic-Con, the biggest comic convention in practically the world, one of the biggest. And we're invited as special guests, so being put up in hotels and stuff, and like taken on for interviews and stuff like that. And I was just constantly analyzing and thinking, like, when's this going to wear my family out? I need to pick and choose, and so that was a concern too. I always felt like,
well, Axe Cop. I mean, you were telling me before we started this interview that Axe Cop went viral. The people that were sharing it when you first went live with it, just some huge names, and you were getting invited on CNN and NPR and.
Yeah, there's a lot of articles about it. There's a lot of fear of having Malachi actually on programs. We were on some radio shows. We were almost on, I think, the CBS morning show, one of those morning shows.
I think we talked about it before the interview. I'm not sure we got into it here, but the idea came from your little brother when you were up for Christmas, right?
Yeah. I think we talked about that a bit. He was 5 at the time. I was 29.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of my parents divorced. My dad had moved out to Washington and started a new family, and he was kind of the surprise kid. So I had 2 sisters who were about 5 or 6 years older than him, and then he was the surprise kid they had.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we didn't think we're gonna have another kid because my dad's like, he was 40 when I was born.
Yeah.
So he's pretty old when Malachi was born. He's like he's hitting late 60s when Malachi's born.
Wow.
And his wife, Dila, she's around early 40s when he's born.
Yeah.
And so he was a total surprise to the whole family. But this little crazy bundle of energy, hilarious kid. We did some drawings together. I put them in the back of some of the Axe Cop books that show some of the characters we created together. But when he started talking about Axe Cop, this instant character in my head. I was like, I have to draw this guy. I just had to draw this thing. And when we started playing it, I just loved it. I was laughing so hard. I was drawing them. Once I went to bed, I'd sit on my laptop and draw them digitally, just crank out the comic and then share it with my friends. And I was laughing to the point of tears at some of these. But I thought this is because I found my brother so funny. I didn't think it was universal. I thought that this was, to me, I was sharing family photographs or something.
Just an inside joke.
To me, it's cute. To other people, oh, I get it. Yeah, you're having fun with your brother.
Yeah.
So I was kind of shocked when it went I realized it was universal. It was universal in a way that not just we could all relate to because we had been kids before. It was also universal in this way that he was finding all these funny tropes without meaning to. And it was also taking comics and entertainment lightly and just asking the question, what's awesome? What can we do that makes this more awesome?
Yeah.
Rather than how do we make this more realistic, which at the time, culturally, comic movies and products, that was their drive. And I think culturally, we were getting tired of that. Comic movies weren't, this is before a lot of the Marvel Universe stuff was coming out. This is back when it was, the best stuff was like the X-Men movies that took it really seriously.
Yeah.
And so there was this thing in the air that I didn't even quite realize until at that point when I look back, we wanted to get back to that popcorn film. Comics are for having fun. It's to be a big kid. It's just to ask what's amazing. Riding on a T-Rex with machine guns for arms with an axe in your hand, screaming at the bad guys. That's what you want for comics. And so I think that's why it resonated too.
Well, around that time, Kick-Ass came out as a movie, right? And
yeah, around that time, yep.
That probably was part of that move towards a realistic stuff, and you were kind of going the opposite direction.
Yeah, well, no, I think Kick-Ass was going for realism, but it was also going for comedy, though, too.
Yeah.
It was a comedy.
Yeah.
So I think it was part of the transition, because it was breaking away from that, how do we take, Wolverine and make him as realistic as possible? I think, now, you have Guardians of the Galaxy, now you have a talking raccoon. Nobody has to explain it. It's just awesome,
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. There was a while there where there was this thing where we had to make it as dark and gritty and serious as we could, and I think that the Marvel Universe especially, they did a good job of breaking us out of that. We we go to these movies to have fun.
Yeah.
And I think it's been good. There's been a lot of them, but yeah.
So you married?
Yep.
Kids?
My eHarmony adventures finally paid off about 3 years after, and married a woman out in Rancho Cucamonga named Jessica, and she had 2 kids already, so I became an instant stepdad. We now have 2 more, so I have 4 kids. And I never saw myself living in Rancho Cucamonga, but here I am. And that's kind of a funny thing that led to when I became a fan of the Babylon Bee and reached out a couple times, finally I got a hold of Kyle because he followed me, the editor-in-chief, because he's an Axe Cop fan. And so when I messaged him after he followed me, I was like, hey, I love the Babylon Bee. I'd love to do some Photoshops or whatever. I'm like, I'm seeing you guys' Photoshops. You could use somebody that's a little better at it. And I just, I had so many jokes. So I sent him like 30 headline ideas just off the bat. And there's like 5 or 6 in there he loved, which is, now that I've seen how the submissions we get, that's almost unheard of. Like, to get somebody to send in 30 headlines and even have one useful one, it's just it's hard. And so he was pretty excited. Adam Ford, the guy who created the Babylon Bee, instantly emailed me and said, hey, you're awesome, so happy we found you. So I was just writing articles for them immediately. Off the bat, I was writing them for free, for the fun of it. And then he'd pay me for Photoshops here and there. And then when the Bee sold, Adam sold the Bee to a guy named Seth Dillon out in Florida. Seth bought the Bee, but he didn't want to creative direct at all. He said, you guys keep doing what you're doing. I just want to try to make it grow. See if we can monetize, because they weren't monetizing hardly at all. Just ads, and not very putting a lot of thought into it. Just slapping some ads up. And so he put me on as I would just report my hours to him, and so I was kind of contractor for a while. And then when he sold the Bee, Kyle came on as the editor-in-chief. So he quit his job in construction and started working full-time for the Bee. And then I was the next employee. Just about a year later, I think, they took me on, and so now we work in a little office out here in the Inland Empire, and we got a podcast going now, and keeping really busy, putting together a big book, and so the crazy thing was that Kyle happened to live about 5 miles from me. That's what I was getting to, like, strange circumstances. Like, if I hadn't lived out here, I don't know that I'd be doing this right now. We happen to live down the road from each other. And so I get to work on the Babylon Bee in person. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So tell the listeners a little bit more about the history of the Bee, because it seemed like, from me on the sidelines, it was like just all of a sudden, like a couple months after the Bee launched, I start seeing friends sharing these various headlines.
Yeah.
Now, I grew up just north of Madison, Wisconsin. And anyone that's a fan of The Onion knows that Madison is where The Onion started.
Okay.
And started in like the late 80s. And so in the summer of 1992, right after I graduated, actually before I graduated high school, it was the last month before I graduated, we did a little trip down to Madison. And I remember seeing this little newspaper with just the funniest headline on it. And I remember picking it up saying, what the heck is this? And reading through and just laughing my butt off. And so for me, The Onion was like, it was a little piece of that hometown that made it big. Mm-hmm. And so I took a great deal of pride in The Onion.
Interesting.
But it was right after, I want to say just before Trump got elected, that they started being less and less funny. Mm-hmm. And it just became just almost mean and just not funny. And so to have the Bee come along and kind of replace that, but replace it from kind of a place where I've cut my teeth, 15 years working for Jim Dobson at Focus on the Family and Family Talk, and in that whole Christian conservative circles and growing up in a church, so much of the stuff you guys were saying was just, Adam at the time was saying, was just beyond funny to me. And so it really kind of filled that hole that The Onion kind of just left.
And so, I think there's always a lot of jokes The Onion never would have made that the Bee makes. Especially, from outside the church, there's only like 3 jokes you can make about the church, But from inside, if you're coming from a place of love, there's so many inside jokes. And I think that was one place the Bee really launched.
One of my favorite headlines that you guys have done was Tim Keller and the kids that
make fun of his bald head.
Made fun of his bald head, and he called out the Bears.
The 42 youths. Yeah, I wasn't around for the first year or two, but yeah, you're right. It launched right around the election of Trump. And a lot of people think that the Babylon Bee became very political. It actually has always been pretty political. The thing is, like, when it first launched, the stories that went the most viral, I think off the bat, were the more Christian culture ones. But over time, the more political ones are the ones that by far go way more viral now. They blow the other ones out of the water. And so we always try to put a couple Christian ones out every day. We put out like 6 news stories a day out. And but yeah, I didn't. Adam Ford was a webcomics guy. He made these Christian webcomics that are really clever and fun. They're kind of like, I've heard of the Oatmeal, but it's like this popular online webcomic. It's huge. And he was kind of making similar comics to that. He has a news site now. That's one reason he quit the Bee. He created his own real news site with Seth, who's the CEO of Babylon Bee, called Discern. It's a DISRN, and it's kind of like a news aggregator. They share news in a very concise way. You get an email every day with kind of everything that's happened, like yesterday, and it's pretty cool. It's worth checking out if you're into following the news. It's a good news source for that.
Adam's a really private guy.
Yeah.
And so what was it like for him, from your perspective, when it blew up?
Once again, I wasn't around for it. Kyle would be the guy to answer on that.
Yeah.
He does smoke cigars, but he doesn't consider him somebody he thought we were going to like get into all this cigar like knob talk, you know?
Yeah.
So he didn't come. I was trying to get him to come anyway, but he was there for all that because Adam immediately said, he said, I'm going to start a kind of like The Onion, but like a Christian version. If anybody has ideas, send them to me. And Kyle immediately started sending all his ideas. Just his brain was going. And if you meet Kyle, he's wired for this. Almost every story you see on the Bee, it's like 80% almost are him. At least the articles, almost 80% of the articles are written by him, and probably a good 60% of the headlines, maybe 50%. He's always on. He's always thinking. So he was pitching headlines in one of the writers from the very beginning. And he probably, he was turning in multiple stories a day from the very beginning, even when he was making no money doing it. So he's been with the Bee, and he's been kind of the main Bee story guy from the beginning. So yeah, it was a pretty natural transition, I think. For Adam, it was a thing he wanted to do on the side to kind of goof off, and he just didn't foresee what would happen with it. So I know it went viral. I know it happened really fast for them, and I think he had never intended for it to be his main gig. And so once it got big enough, he sold it, and he's still part of it. Like, we have a Slack channel where we just all talk. Yeah. Adam's part of it. Probably interact with him at least once every day. So he's still involved. We're going to have him on the podcast pretty soon. Sweet. To kind of catch up with him. But he's now the kind of guy who does the kind of stuff that like me and Kyle do a podcast. He just didn't want to do any of that kind of stuff with the Bee. He just had a very specific vision for what he wanted to do. He's a very fascinating guy. One of those guys that's always got something going on.
So who's Seth? So Seth bought the Bee, but really, what's his story?
From what I know, he found success through apps and tech stuff. I'm not sure what apps they were, but he's out of Florida. He's actually a little bit younger than I am. Him and his brother just built these things kind of from the ground up, and so he's just one of these entrepreneur guys who made money, and he saw potential in the Bee. He's a Christian guy, and he cares a lot about freedom of speech type of stuff, religious liberty. It's all a big deal to him. And so I think he first looked into the Bee. He wanted to be an investor or something like that. Yeah. I think Adam was in the middle of almost selling the Bee to a different company or a different group. Yeah. And then that fell through. So then Seth said he'd buy it, and they figured it out. And that's my third-hand understanding of the story.
Yeah. And so Kyle came on early on. Tell listeners a little bit about Kyle, who Kyle is, and does he like cigars?
Kyle likes cigars. That was the first time we met. We met at a place I really like out in Glendora called Marty's. It's a great cigar shop. And it was the first time we met in person. And I was like, oh my gosh, the Babylon Bee guy likes cigars. So we met up, had a cigar together. Instantly hit it off. We just, it's one of those people, we speak the same language. So we'd meet off and on. He was living he might have been in San Diego at that time. But he's from here, and he was moving back. And so we'd meet maybe once a month. And just to pitch ideas, and kind of it's fun to write in person when you can. Almost all of the Bee stuff is written online, just instant messaging, and we have a private Facebook group where we probably pitch 300 to 500 headlines a week in this private group. With there's probably I think there's maybe 30 people in it, but I think only about 10 are actively pitching headlines generally. So so it's fun to suddenly have somebody in person to talk to. I think for Kyle too, and I just kind of became a logical addition to the group. I think because I had the Photoshop skills, so I do the more complicated Photoshops, and
which, by the way, you guys recently had a article about a headline about Trump's potential impeachment, and there was a photo of all these evangelical leaders that are diehard Trump supporters, and Trump basically asking, who's going to betray me? It's
they're all asking him. Yeah, it's the Last Supper.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That was one of my chops.
That is such a fantastic Photoshop job.
Thank you.
where it's like, oh my God, you guys just need to get that and sell it on the website, because that's something I'd probably put on my on the wall in my office.
Yeah, that was controversial, to say the least. But yeah, those are kind of ones I do. Those ones Kyle send to me. He knows it's going to take me at least a few hours to get it done. So, but it's fun. We have some crazy. I constantly ask myself. I just have to laugh. Like, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm photoshopping the most ridiculous thing.
Union Seminary.
Yeah, that was what I was just thinking of.
The giant plant.
Yeah.
That refused to accept the apologies.
He did not accept their apologies and starts eating the college students, rid of the seminary students.
Oh,
that was a fun one.
The Babylon Bee. And so you are on the Babylon Bee launched a podcast, and you guys started it earlier this year? Probably, I want to say late.
Yeah, we're on episode 17. Summer. 17 episodes in, and we're 17 weeks. We put it out every week.
You and Kyle interview just various voices.
Yeah, some episodes is just me and Kyle. We'll pick a main topic to do. We've been getting an interview almost every episode now. So we interview all kinds of people in that space. So not all Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our first interviews, I think our first interview may have been Michael Malice, he's a anarchist.
That was such a good conversation.
Oh,
that was fun.
I thought it was great.
That was fun.
Yeah, he's fun.
Actually, he was on Rogan, right?
Yeah, that's where I heard of him.
And so I remember
me on his show.
I remember downloading that Rogan episode to listen to more of him. And I'm like, this dude's fascinating.
Yeah, I liked him a lot when I heard him on Rogan. I like people that don't think along expected lines, So he's just entertaining. Seemed fair most of the time. He's a troll, but he admits that he likes to be a troll. And he had me on his show when I was promoting Bears Want to Kill You. When I went to New York and interviewed on his show. I was on Jonah Goldberg and Eric Metaxas. And then so that kind of asked him, hey, you want to be one of our first interviews? Why not? Just thought it'd be fun. So, because he had a lot of things to say about how comedy can be used as a weapon, which was the topic that we went with.
Yeah.
So that's one thing about the Babylon Bee. Everybody that I know on the Babylon Bee, we're all pretty serious about our faith. I mean, there's guys, a couple of our best writers, they'll never toot their own horn, but these are the best Christian guys you've ever met. A couple of these guys, they have kids that, we have one guy that's got a kid with Down syndrome, another one that's got a severely disabled kid. They're living out their faith. They're amazing family men. They're the real deal, They're real about the reason we can make the jokes we do is because we know we've read our Bibles,
Yeah.
We take our faith seriously. So there's I think everybody within the group takes their faith seriously, and there is often stuff we want to make sure we get some kind of a message out about a thing. Like recently, the whole controversy with this forgiveness thing that happened with the Botham Jean thing, where his brother forgave Amber Geiger in court, and there's all this controversy, this race thing going on about this guy forgiving a white woman, and everybody thinking she shouldn't be forgiven or whatever. And so we felt like it really needed some, even though they're jokes, the ridiculousness of it needed to be pointed out. And one thing I really treasure about the Babylon Bee is we get to point out the ridiculousness of our culture on a daily basis. And so I really enjoy that part of it. And there's a difference between going on Twitter and spouting your mouth off, or just going into a room full of people and spouting your mouth off, and releasing a joke, through your own avenue, and it's up to everybody else if they want to share it. And so it's not quite as, it's not my personality to be that loudmouth that goes in and wants to tell everybody his opinion.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy creating.
As an introvert, it's not really.
And also just, I much more appreciate when people create something to make their point.
Yeah.
Like I love the movie Get Out. I probably don't agree with the politics of Jordan Peele, who created it, but it's an amazing work of art. He puts me into his mind for that movie, and I get to see it in this amazing perspective. To me, if whether or not we agree, I hope I respect anybody who does that kind of work to make their point.
That's fantastic. And then you have a podcast. You and Doug, and I think it's out.
Is this one out too?
Yeah,
we're running out of lighters left and right here.
All right, we have to go to the Bic lighter.
Yeah, the Bic. Just a little.
And then you have a podcast with Doug.
Doug and Mike Nelson.
Mike Nelson, called Audio Mullet.
Audio Mullet. Mike Nelson is, if you ever watched Mystery Science Theater 3000, he was the human in that show with the two little robots.
Yeah.
So he was. That's the funny thing. Mike and Doug, I think you said that you have a question you asked on this podcast, like if you could smoke a cigar with anybody. For a long period of time, that was I would love to smoke a cigar with one of those two guys, or both. Was like, oh man, just at least once. And then it became a regular, we became very good friends. We all ended up, we started the Chestertonian group together. Mike would drive from San Diego to go to it because he had found this, home base. He loved it.
Yeah.
And then we all ended up, Doug's out in Tennessee now. Mike is out in Minnesota. I'm here. So we started doing Audio Mullet to kind of fill that gap. So it is kind of the stuff we talk about with our cigars in our mouths, just talking as if nobody else is listening. So it's just kind of it's a free-for-all. But it is talking about our unpopular views. So that's what it's about. The mullet idea is that the mullet's an out-of-fashion hairdo. And so this is the audio version of being out of fashion. And so, but it's fun. We try to keep it funny and light, but also we get into some heavy topics. And I love it. It's definitely a more masculine podcast. I definitely think a lot of guys, we have a lot bigger audience of men, but I love it. It's a passion project. We do it completely just for free. It's just fun.
That's fantastic. So Ethan, right now the bee is kind of fighting Snopes. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on there, because this is something that really is a threat to you guys, with social media potentially deplatforming you because of what Snopes is doing.
Snopes is, if people don't know, it's this online fact checker who tells people what's real and what's not real. You find a video of some guy throwing a baby up in the air or something, and then you say, oh my gosh, this is insane. And then Snopes will go, oh no, it's CG or something like that, or they'll dig up the facts. It started out as like a urban legends kind of website. The first big run-in with Snopes was when Snopes had a partnership with Facebook. And we had posted a really stupid article, saying that CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news. It's just the dumbest. If anybody could believe that's real. Snopes flagged it as not true and posted this big article saying it's fake, which should be obvious. I still would love to meet the person who believed it. But when we got into our site, Facebook said, this article has been taken down, it's been flagged by Snopes. If you continue to post articles like this, you could be deplatformed or taken off the website. This is, the whole crackdown about fake news.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was that they just had this whole automated thing. I think Snopes, I assume that they probably get paid by the article. I don't know. It's hilarious that they would have to say that's fake, but we believe Snopes has a place on the internet for sure. It's great for people to realize that, because not only because the weird area that we're in satire is there's a lot of people that abuse the term satire. And they just create completely fake news sites that just have headlines that would make people want to outrage click to read. Like a good example is just recently when Kevin Hart got in an accident, there was a quote-unquote satire website that posted this story saying that he was paralyzed for life, or he was in critical condition and might die, or just They just took the headline people were afraid was going to be real, and they made it. And then in tiny print on their about page, it says, "We are a satire site." But really, it's just a lie to get ad revenue clicks. So that's what we're up against at the Babylon Bee. And the other thing we're up against, I think, is, I think Snopes leans left. It's pretty clear. I think the people at Facebook lean left. That's pretty clear. And I think they don't get conservative humor, and they think there's something else going on. So one thing that you notice on Snopes, they would fact check the Onion far less often than the Bee. I mean, we have like 30 or 40 articles fact checked on Snopes at this point. Last time I checked, the Onion had 2015. I can't remember, but the Onion, they had if you look at the little text how they categorize it, the Onion was always categorized under jokes, humor, gags, something like that. The Babylon Bee was always categorized as junk news, which all these other fake news websites would be categorized under. So they were categorizing us as fake news. So the next big thing that happened was we had another one where he posted this joke that this Georgia lawmaker, I can't remember her name, but she had been in a grocery store and had something where she said that this guy told her to go back to her country or something like that, and she posted this big thing online. So we made this dumb joke that she was at Chick-fil-A, and the employee, because it turned out that the guy hadn't said this at all. He had said, you're in the 15 items or less line. Go get in one of the lines because you have way more than 15 items. That was the issue.
Yeah.
And so we did this joke where the Chick-fil-A, she's claimed that the Chick-fil-A guy told her to go back to her country. It turns out he just said, "My pleasure." Just like, and she made it up out of nothing. And so Snopes got on that, and they wrote this article that wasn't just, "No, it's not true, the Babylon Bee is satire." They had all this language in there about how we were attempting to confuse and upset people and create outrage, which I think tells me they probably just didn't get the joke. But that was when I know Seth retained some lawyers and stuff, and we sent a letter to them and said, this isn't okay. And that was kind of the big first thing that happened. So the big issue there is that Snopes is a powerful organization, and companies like Facebook take them seriously. So if they say we're fake news, and the internet has this charge to get rid of fake news right now to make sure people are getting the truth, if we get categorized wrong, we will get deplatformed, and our whole, the Bee would fall apart if we lost our Facebook. Our Facebook is our main source right now, probably of traffic.
Yeah.
So that'd be bad. And that was one thing that got us to launch the subscriber service, because then we're directly connected to our audience. Facebook isn't standing in between, and so it's been an ongoing thing. Snopes, they've been mocked pretty heavily, I think rightfully so, for some of their ridiculous articles, and they're trying to justify themselves and the things they've done. They've changed it to, rather than saying our stories are false, they say labeled satire. But they say that about Onion articles, and they say it about, the Kevin Hart article. We're all still categorized under the same thing where we're just labeled satire. So it's like, guy who makes racist joke at party is like categorized with Seinfeld. It's like, it doesn't, it's such a broad category. So to try to justify what they're doing, they created this study where they presented Babylon Bee headlines to people and asked them if they thought they were true or not. And the study showed that more conservatives were tricked than liberals. But what they did is they took our headlines, they didn't have the context, they didn't have the funny image with it, and they reworded the headline to be, like, summarize. For instance, summarize or, So when there was one article where we had this joke that, CNN, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but that CNN said that they have they have unyielding faith in the Russia conspiracy, and it was kind of drawing this parallel between how some Christians have, no matter what the scientific evidence, that that dinosaurs were sent here to challenge our faith or whatever, that no matter what they'll believe in whatever. Yeah. And so it's kind of a joke on that. So there's this image of everybody in CNN praying, and then there's this big prayer in the article, and that they had this unyielding faith about the Russia conspiracy. So they reworded it to say, would Anderson Cooper, did he refuse to budge on his views on the Russia conspiracy? It was like something like that, almost sounds like it probably is true, maybe, especially if you lean conservative and have a view of Anderson Cooper.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a joke.
No.
So that was how they made their point. So anyway, it has been an ongoing. It's at this moment, it's been very good for us. It's really raised awareness of the Babylon Bee. You know, Kyle's written for the Wall Street Journal. Seth was on Fox News. Got a lot more support. Got a lot of subscribers out of it. But there is a looming danger there where if they feel like they need to, or even if they're using an excuse, that's the weird thing. It's dubious. Like, are they trying to shut us down because we were making conservative jokes? Is that not okay with them? You just don't really know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that sums it up quite a bit.
Perfect. So Holy Smokers become a paid subscriber to the Babylon Bee, not only to support what they're doing, but then also to help with this fight against Snopes. And let's keep this place going. Let's keep this great resource that provides so many of us just laughs, especially in this day of outrage culture, to go on Facebook and see a friend share a headline from the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, please do. The subscriptions are, I mean, they at this point, they've become our bread and butter, and they're really helping out. I wouldn't have gotten hired on if it weren't for the subscriptions. So we're just hiring an assistant. Me and Kyle just got an assistant on, so
nice.
It's growing, and yeah, the more subscribers we get, the more we can expand.
Ethan, Nicolle, thanks for being on. Now it's time for rapid fire questions to close us out.
All right.
Hey everyone, before we get to Ethan's rapid fire segment, I wanted to let you know we have links to Ethan's books on Amazon in our show notes. Also in those links is a link to pre-order his latest book, a children's book, scheduled for release in mid-November, Brave Ollie Possum. You'll hear Ethan describe it in a couple of minutes, but here's what the description on Amazon says. Ollie Maccarelli is determined to face his fear of the dark once and for all. But he gets more than he bargained for when his therapist turned out to be an actual monster. To make it even worse, Ollie is transformed from a boy to a possum and locked in a cage. With no way to call for help, Ollie must learn to be brave with the help of some furry friends, or he will end up a bowl of soup. I personally am confident this book will end up an all-time children's classic, so what better Christmas gift for your kids or grandkids, or even future grandkids, than a mint first printing of Brave Ollie Possum? It'll be a treasured family heirloom for generations. And by buying any of Ethan's books through our affiliate links provided in those show notes, you're helping to support the production costs of the Holy Smokes podcast. Holy Smokes is a nonprofit, and your donations through our PayPal link, or if you sign up to become a regular supporter through Patreon, go a long way in helping us keep the lights on with the show. You can donate paypal.me/Holy Smokes Club, or check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/Holy Smokes, and those links will be in the show notes. Now, on to Ethan Nicolle's Rapid Fire segment.
Rapid Fire! Fire. Here.
All right.
I'm ready.
Cigars or pipe?
Cigars. Pipe burns my tongue. I have pipes, but it hurts. I've never gotten the hang of it.
Favorite cigar?
For a long time, it was the Rocky Patel Sun-Grown. But lately, there's a cigar called the Flor de Selva, which is, I guess, popular in European countries. But this other cigar shop in town I go to a lot, they carry it. And I just love it. It's lower price. It's super clean, good Connecticut wrapper. I love it.
I would assume that's probably then the answer to my next question. Your best dollar for dollar cigar.
Yeah, because it's like $12.99, which out here is not bad.
Favorite liquid pairing with your smoke?
I'm pretty much a beer guy. I like to have quantity and quality, so I generally don't smoke with scotch unless I'm with guys that have scotch, and I'll have some. But I like stouts and porters, so I like big dark beers in my cigars.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm constantly mocking people that care. So if I had to pick one, I would pick Star Wars, only because I love creature design, and there's more creature design and cool robots and creatures and aliens. That's really what I'm into when I watch Star Wars. I I'm not religiously a Star Wars fanatic. I'm constantly giving Kyle crap for that on the Babylon Bee podcast, actually.
Marvel or DC?
I guess I would have to pick Marvel, but once again, that's another one of those debates. I'm like always kind of pointing and laughing at people that care.
Nickname growing up or in college or young adult years?
My nickname has been EEF, E-E-F, kind of like beef without the B. Our drummer in my band, our first drummer, just somehow started calling me that. And it really caught on because I used it as a screen name, so everybody that knew me on the internet knew me as EEF, and there's still people that call me EEF to this day.
How many chickens would it take to kill an elephant?
Oh man, probably at least in the 6 to 7 figures, I think.
If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume you had done?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know if it's a good question, but it's a hard one. What would they think I had done? They either probably would have think I was framed because I've always been known to be such kind of a goody two-shoes, I think. Or they might have thought with the Babylon Bee now that it had something to do with a lawsuit or something, with making fun of Scientologists or something. Who knows? I don't know.
What are some fun and interesting alternatives to war that countries could settle their differences with?
Maybe they could they could pick an animal and make it fight their animal, or they could like cyborg animals.
Cyborg
kind of like
animals.
RoboCop, where the animal already died, but then they added a robo exoskeleton to it. So it's like Robo Wars. That'd be kind of cool.
Cybernetic animals.
Yeah, like a cyborg gorilla versus a cybernetic warthog or something, and they fight in a pit.
What's the best type of cheese?
I don't know my cheeses that well, but I like the ones that have bacon in them.
What's your most memorable cigar experience?
When I came to San Diego, it was the second time, I think. All the guys from that cigar forum, they had a big gathering. They happened to be having a big gathering the same weekend. So they invited me out. And these guys they'd all brought me gift cigars because they were congratulating me for finally getting my book done. They'd kind of followed the whole process. There's one guy who he couldn't make it, but he sent a cigar for them to give to me. It was like $100 cigar. Wow. Some super limited, it was called that Cafe Epicure or something like that. This super limited numbered cigar,
yeah,
Cuban. And I decided I just smoke it there. I mean, so I had that, and it was an amazing cigar. And that's probably the most memorable one. It was such a great gift and such a great environment to smoke it in. And the most expensive cigar I've ever smoked.
Last 2 questions.
Okay.
If you could have a holy smoke with anyone in history, living or passed away, who would those 3 people be? And you can't name Jesus just because so many people.
Yeah. So are these 3 separate, or are they all going to be in the same room at one time?
All going to be in the same room at one time.
Whew. Well, definitely G.K. Chesterton. Easy first pick is G.K. Chesterton. Just the idea.
He was a pipe guy, right?
He actually wasn't a pipe guy. That's
okay.
A lot of people. It's funny. It's almost like a Mandela effect.
Yeah.
Try to find an image of him with a pipe. You think you see them all in your head.
Yeah.
And there's none.
Okay.
He was cigars and cigarettes.
Okay.
I am fascinated by Jordan Peterson. I don't know if he smoked cigars, but there's something. I met him briefly at this thing I went to recently, and I just love the guy's mind. I'd love to sit and talk to him.
At Holy Smokes, we have people that don't smoke that do show up. So
okay,
all right. So Chesterton, Jordan Peterson, which I do like that. It's the first time I've heard of Jordan Peterson and Chesterton for this
Chesterton
answer.
is by far. I'm fascinated by that guy's mind. Did I have a third? Those are the 2 that kind of hit me off the bat, but I struggle. I struggle with finalizing things. I didn't have a third one in my head when I came, so let me just try to pull one out here. Yeah, this is why I always draw blanks and I'm like forced to think of something. I'm trying to get somebody who's not in politics and faith, someone like in animation and all that, but or in comics. But Well, I'm going to go with the generic answer, but he would be amazing to talk to, and that'd be C.S. Lewis. I mean, to be part of the Inklings group,
Yeah.
you know, it would be great to have Tolkien there too. I don't know. I might, if Tolkien's an option, I would have to replace him with Peterson, but I was trying to go for variety. I didn't want to just say Chesterton, Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis, but that would be amazing.
All right, final question.
Okay.
If we're to meet 1 year from now, and I got a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating?
Hopefully we're celebrating either a new book or movie. I have my new children's book I'm working on right now. It's done. It's coming out in the middle of October, called Brave Ollie Possum. It's my first kids novel, and I'm working on the audiobook right now. It's my favorite thing I've made. It's a total fairy tale, and I love it. I don't know if it'll do well or not, but in my fantasy, that thing gets made into a movie. So we'll see.
What do you need to get that done?
What do I need?
Yeah, what do you need to get that done?
I need everybody to buy the book and it to become really popular.
All right, Holy Smokes community, you've heard it.
And yeah, probably by the time this comes out, it could be close to coming out.
We will have a link. It will be out, and so we will have a link for people to purchase. I assume it'll probably be paperback,
hardcover. Should be on Amazon. Hardcover's coming out.
As well as a Kindle version.
Yep.
So, Holy Smokers, go buy. Not only this book, what's the name of it again?
Brave Ollie Possum, especially if you have kids. It's a great bedtime story. Read a couple chapters a night. Kids will love it.
Brave Ollie Possum.
It's kind of a horror comedy about a kid who gets turned into a possum by a horrible witch woman, and he has to figure out how to befriend the animals of the forest and then defeat her so that he can turn back into a boy.
So, Holy Smokers, go get that book, as well as Ethan's other stuff. Bears Want to Kill You, the authoritative guide to survival in the war between man and bear. Dickinson Killdeer's Guide to Bears the Apocalypse, Bearmageddon, and the Axe Cop series.
Indeed. Yes, please do. Indeed.
Support this guy. Let's see this happen. Let's see an option for a movie.
When you read the Babylon Bee, click on the headlines and read the articles so that we get ad revenue.
And also subscribe, because
you can do a paid subscriber and get extended podcasts, no ads. We're working on more stuff for that. That's really what pays our salaries, is subscribers. So if you love the Bee, you can become I think a $2 to $5. I think there's a $5 and $10 option or something. So worth it.
So let's support the Bee. Let's support Ethan and his endeavors. And Ethan, welcome to the Holy Smokes community.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You guys have got to be my kind of people.